So once again, welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Bill S., who's come to share for up to 40 minutes on the topic of can't have a relationship with God without God. After which we'll open up for the Q&A portion of the meeting. And with that, it's over to you, Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Isaac and Young, and everyone who came to support me, and those who came not knowing they were going to hear me again and stayed on anyhow. I've been very nervous about this, and I didn't want to give life to it. I told everyone for the last 3 weeks, the days we're approaching is kind of like going to court. The deal's worked out, but the judge hasn't signed off on it yet, so you never know what's going to happen. And I told Josh the other day, I said, Young asked me to speak on Unshakable Foundation. I said, you know where they got that name from? It comes out of my favorite run-in of paragraphs in the 12 and 12. It says prayer, meditation, and self-examination. Any one of those aspects that I engage in produce tremendous results. But when interwoven logically together, they produce an unshakable foundation for life. Unshakable. And then a promise comes after that, and I've experienced it. It says, occasionally, we are granted a glimpse of the ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom. All you got to do is burn your life into the ground over and over and over again until there's nothing left. And I thought about the big time, Josh. I remember a friend of mine who's active in general service took me down to Mansfield Reformatory to take a meeting in. It wasn't my first time there. And we got there one night exceptionally early. We had like 45 minutes to kill, and he had done time there. And he said, let me give you a tour of the place. Like it was a neighborhood block party or something. And he's driving me around and he's pointing out different buildings. And he said, that's the minimum security. They don't use that anymore. Most of these guys are medium. He said, that over there, he said, that's the maximum security. He said, in fact, that's where they filmed Shawshank Redemption. I never knew that. It was filmed 50 miles from where I live. And then he showed me where we were going to speak. That was the medium security. And I just didn't have the heart to tell him. I said, Jerry, we don't have guns or keys. They're all maximum security to me. We ain't getting out till they let us out. Now, this guy took that commitment for 19 plus years. Twice a month, we'd get in his car and get a speaker and drive 60 miles there and 60 miles back. And we were coming around the back. He had so much time. I mean, it was like his alma mater. And he took me over this place where they had these concrete abutments coming out of the ground. It looked like parking spots that were just not in the right place. And he said, you know what those are? And I said, I don't know what those are, Jerry. He said, those are tombstones. I said, why would anyone come here to be buried, Jerry? He said, are you an idiot? He said, they don't come here to be buried. That's where they bury the guys who die inside. I said, you mean like guys do in life? He said, no, maybe they're only doing a year or two. And whether you know this or not, in the UK, 85% of the inmates in our prisons are there because of a drug or alcohol-related crime. Either under the influence or made one decision in the name of one more that put them behind bars for a long time. I've made a lot of those decisions. I don't want to say it was God's grace, but I know it's God's grace, but it didn't mean that it wasn't offered to them. And I said, wow, they die in there. Why do they choose to get buried here? He said, that's not their choice. I said, then why are they buried there? He said, because their life wasn't worth anyone coming to claim the body. For CA. I had a feeling every time I was locked up, there were two things that I wished for above all else. I didn't want to die in there because it would just leave a terrible legacy. And I didn't want my mom to die while I was in there. And I kept making decisions over and over again with this power that you call God from a position of self. I remember I was thinking about this. I'm going to share this because my sister's on here, and my sister, her assignment in life, if I had to define it, was to pray for me. And she would call me in the middle of the run, and I had to answer the phone because if not, she would think, we caused a lot of damage. I was letting her know I was in between hits. And I remember one day she called me and she said, I was in church yesterday. And she said there was a story they were telling, and I thought of you. She said it was a story of Mary and Martha. They sent a message to Jesus and said, Lord, the one you love is sick. And she said, I thought of you. And I thought, isn't that the story here? Lord, the ones you love are sick. Now I feel bad and I feel dirty. And I told my sister I might as well have just gone to the Pinellas County Jail and waited for him. Because every time she prayed for me, I said, quit praying against me. I always went to jail. And I never got the message till recently. I was telling Kirsty and the group before the meeting, I've had some revelatory experiences. I was never being punished. I was in the Department of Corrections, and something about my life needed correction. I was at a meeting last week, and a girl was sharing something. I never heard anyone say this, but it was another just description of my life. She said, I was a good client, I was a model patient, and I was a great inmate. And I thought, me too. I do treatment well, I do jail well. And I started to think, you know why that is, Young? Because they feed me, the food's prepared. I don't have to worry about buying toilet paper. I mean, I got to go to the bathroom when they let me. I got to take a shower when they let me, and people are telling me what to do, and it's no way to live. But I realized that my life was that unstructured that God put me in timeout. That's what we tell our kids now. Timeout. And in timeout, I went. And when I got out of timeout, what I had done is rested up to go get high again because I had no defense against the first one. And coming to CA, I said they finally have a fellowship where I can share my story. I did cocaine like a pig. My friend said, big deal. What'd that do? Get you a seat in the CA meeting? He said, be recovery like a pig. So it says in how it works, our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like. And I almost wanted to tell Young, I can't tell my story. It's so hard. I've been in the Fellowship of Recovery for 43 years. I'm coming up on 28 months of recovery. And what happened was, I kept thinking that having this relationship, it says in the book, God does not make too hard of terms. And I listened to Howard the other day speak on your sister meeting. And he said, the religion makes hard terms, but God doesn't make hard terms. I'm going to tell you what, I make impossible terms. If God did the things that I asked him to do for me to believe in him, it would have destroyed me. I was the one making the terms. And God doesn't operate on my terms. What I needed to do was have a relationship with God, and I couldn't do it without God. What I'm getting at is I could never surrender. I couldn't take the third step without God's help. I never got that. I spent 40 years stuck on pages 60 through 63. You said, what is that about? That's the instructions for step 3. That's not a bad thing. It is when you're the one producing confusion, when you're the one in collision, when you're the one finding fault with everyone God puts in your life to help you because you don't realize it's not them, it's you. So it says in there, our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like. Holy moly, it would take forever to tell you what I used to be like unless I get honest here. So I was thinking, here's what I used to be like this week. This is the importance. I got a guy on here. First of all, I was asked to do a big book meeting for 2 hours, and they've been trying to get me to do it for a few months. And my good friend Josh Baker joined me on that, and I mean, we killed it. We were like Dr. Trey and Eminem for the first session, so much so that I started to fall in love with the sound of my own voice. It sounded better and better the more I talked. By the time Thursday came at my home group, they weren't doing things the way I thought they should. And I was the host that day, which means I had the ability to mute them all and subject them to my opinion of how the meeting should be run. And 2 days after that, one of the members of the home group called me up, said, I want to tell you, I didn't feel very well after that meeting. And I thought, well, there's 300,000 other meetings you can go to, but I didn't say that. I listened. And she said to me, it seemed like we were being talked at like you were a professor or a dictator. And that meeting saved my life. And I thought, if you knew what I knew about that big book and how me and Josh Flow and Dre and Am, boy, you'd have all your sponsors come. But I didn't say any of that. And I thought, I had already known that I was a bit harsh and I'm kind of a bully at times. And when you give me the microphone and you can't talk back, I can really be abrasive. That's mild for self-will run riot. But what happened was I said, I need to make amends. And I knew I did. But after I got off the phone, I thought, well, who does she think she is trying to control me? And I'm not going to make amends with her there so she can get her way. And the very next day I was on the meeting. And the guy that I was irritated enough with to let him know that I had to correct all of them and tell them how a meeting should be run and how important I was. He was there and I said, I was wrong for the way I talked to you. And I told the group I was wrong. And a little bit of that self, I told Josh, because I shared this with him, a little bit of self faded right away. I felt the Holy Spirit come back into me because it was missing and I could see it. But there's something interesting about self-centeredness. It takes that little bit of grace that I get and then it starts fueling off of self again. So Saturday, I'm in a meeting, another big book meeting, and I sound good. And no one knows me there, which means I sounded real good. Because I like to rehearse my comments. You know what I mean? When I go to a place they don't know me, I like to make a good impression. And I meet this guy there, and he's sitting next to me. And I put the money in the basket, and I had my Cocaine Anonymous bankroll. I had a $20 bill around a bunch of singles, you know what I mean, just in case someone was looking. And at the end of the meeting, he said, if anyone needs anything done, I need $20 to pay my phone bill. And I put my money back real quick and hit out the door, but we'd already exchanged numbers. And I was driving away from the meeting, and I felt like a knot in my gut. I said, you know how hard it is to ask for help here? Most of us don't do it. Most of us will die rather than let someone know we need help. And I said, you had $20. He had a need, you had a solution, and you didn't do it, but I had his number. So I called him up and I said, what's your address? And he said, why? And I got pissed off. I said, why is a management question? He gave me the address and I stopped by. I said, here's the $20. But I had to let him know that I noticed that he had bought some raffle tickets. And I said, if you didn't buy the ticket, and of course I'm right all the time. And he said, oh, I didn't buy those. Someone gave them to me. So I said, that was nice. Well, then I inherited a friend because he called me the next day and said, you're not going to believe it. I said, I better sit down and see how much this is going to cost me. He said, I got accepted at this housing that I've been on for 9 months. He said, and I need a ride there. I said, I can do that. He said, I only got 2 bags. I said, I should probably rent a U-Haul truck because an addict's 2 bags, right? 16 rooms of furniture. Well, then I get another call. Well, guess what? They need a money order. And I said, you know what, God, I didn't sign up for this. And I got pissed, but I committed to give him the money and the ride. And I thought maybe I got pissed because maybe his life's not going the way God wants it to, and I'm participating in not God's will in his life. And that's really what I thought because I got that knot in my gut again. So this morning I got up and I got in my car. And of course, he didn't have 2 things because all of a sudden Goodwill stopped by and gave him household goods and stuff. We got my car loaded up and I got a new car. I got a new car with leather seats. And he wants to put his life belongings in my car. And I got to the place and I couldn't wait to get him out of the car. And I said, I don't know why I didn't feel better about myself after helping this guy. I said, I guess his self-centeredness was really obvious to me. And I got a convicting power from this relationship that I have with God. And he said, it's not his self-centeredness that's bothering you. It's your self-centeredness that's causing that angst inside of you. See, I made a deal with God. Every bank in the United States, and I might be exaggerating, maybe there's one that I didn't send it, turned me down for a car loan. And I needed a car. And my first year, 15 months of recovery, I took a job washing dishes in a restaurant. If you had told him, if you're looking for a sugar daddy, I'm not the one. And I was going through a big lawsuit, and every extra penny I had went for that lawsuit. And I trusted God and I told the truth, and the lawsuit ended, but it wasn't settled yet, and that's forthcoming. My sister said, "Why don't you call the credit union?" And I've been in the car business for 30 years. What does my sister know, And I'm laying in bed saying, "God, I guess you don't want me to have a car, and I'm okay with that." Every bank turned me down. And I was laying there. And I said, "What do you got to lose?" I called the credit union the next day. They said, "When do you want to pick up your car?" Look at God. That's what the bell says. Look at God. And I'm telling you what I said that night when I went to get my new car. I said, "God, I will use this car to help you children. And I don't want a guy to put his stuff in the back seat of my car with leather." Wow. That was this week. You want to know what I was like under the influence of crack cocaine, powder cocaine, anything else? You add drugs to that manifestation of self, and what you get is a predator, and that's what I was. By God's grace, I wasn't locked up for 25 years. I don't know why. I don't have to know why. I just need to say yes. My life changed I was thrown out of a crack house for non-sufficient funds. I think I had paid the mortgage off 3 times while I was there. They were doing me a favor, and it didn't look like a favor. I ended up in a crisis unit. And I think the first miracle is that I stayed there the 33 days. Bill Swan humbled himself to stay sleeping on a mattress, letting the people of AA and CA and NA, that I was smarter than all of them and I knew it, come in and bring me the message. 10 days there, a guy came up to me and said, "I need a favor." I thought, if you need 50 cents for the phone, neither of us are going to make a phone call today, because if I had anything, I wouldn't be there. When I'm done, there's nothing left. And he said, "I don't know how to read. Would you read the big book to me and take me through the steps?" And I said, "Yes." Sometimes grudgingly, Monsieur, I say yes, but I've been saying yes ever since, and the light keeps getting brighter. At about 4 or 5 months sober, I realized that I was in trouble. I had been coming here so long that I was immune to anything. I was so full of myself. I'm sitting in the meetings and I can't hear anything. Finding fault with the chair people. I'm finding fault with the topics. I'm telling my sister how sick these people are, and there's got to be something better. There's got to be something different. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I knew in my mind. A guy told me before I got sober on my way here, he said, "You might have to stop lying and stealing to get honest." That is so powerful. I didn't understand how powerful that was. What happened is I quit lying, and I haven't taken anything but a Hershey bar from Walmart. And that was a long time ago, at my first couple of weeks sober. It doesn't belong to me. And what happened is, when I quit participating in the dishonesty, I started to grasp and develop a manner of living that demanded his honesty, and he could start to communicate with me. And there's a difference between not lying, being honest, and knowing the truth. And I had recognized that I had been here 100 times before, which meant I was getting ready to get high again. Because when you know everything, why would you want to be around a bunch of people who don't know anything? But my knowing, what I knew, was killing me. I remember one time I got out of third time I violated probation. Thank God for Judge Nelson. He said, "There's something about you I like, Mr. Swan." I wanted to ask him what it was to stay on his good side, but my lawyer said, "Keep your mouth shut." Maybe the one time I listened. He said, "But if you come before me again in the next 18 months and violate probation, I'll be forced to send you to prison. Please don't force my hand." And I said, "Oh, Judge Nelson, I wouldn't do that to you. Of course, you know I forced his hand, but we're not at the end of the story." But I went back to the meeting and I ran into my buddy Claude. And I said, "Claude, I got to stay clean the next 18 and a half months and get this probation behind me, or Judge Nelson's going to send me to prison." He said, "You might want to try." And before he completed that sentence, I said, "Claude, I know what I need to do to stay clean." He said, if you know what you need to do, you're screwed. I never got that. It's what I knew that was killing me. It was not knowing that was my solution. It was not knowing who God was. It was going to have an opportunity for God to show me, to demonstrate himself. I've been defining God, knowing where he's going to be on Sunday, and I keep going there looking in the wrong place. He was deep within me, and I was blocked. And I called a guy who was guiding me through this lawsuit, and I said, Jim, I'm in trouble. He said, Billy, get in your playpen and your CA training bra. He said, just be a new guy. And I said, I don't know how to be a new guy. And I told Josh, I just realized that the prayer was answered. I said a prayer to God. I said, help me to be a newcomer. And it wasn't until this last week that I realized it was as if God surgically installed a spiritual stethoscope inside of my mind. And for the first time about 20 months ago, I started to hear the heartbeat of AA and CA. Boom, 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 boom. And all of a sudden, the people I wouldn't listen to, because I was really envious of them, Bob D and Ralph, my sponsor, and those guys, Mark Houston, Chris Raymer, I had an opinion about all of them. All of a sudden, why I'm taking this job, humbling myself to wash dishes. I'm listening to YouTube, and the message of Alcoholics Anonymous is penetrating my soul, and I'm starting to come alive. And I'm hearing things that I couldn't hear up until 20 months ago. He had opened my ears because I asked for his help, but I couldn't know that I was headed for disaster had I been participating in the dishonesty that I lived in all my life. I didn't know that when I violated his principles, it made me uncomfortable inside because that's where his spirit dwells, not outside. And I kept filling up my spiritual cavity with garbage. And eventually it would either expel the spirit or want to, and I'd have to go get high to push it down. Let me see how much time I got left because I want to impress you with one good story. You know what I mean? Just kidding. I'll impress you with the truth more than any story. I'm at the end of the road. You know the end of the road. I'm living in my car. I'm estranged. I can't go back to the guy who's been saving my life as long as I'm alive. David Hollister will be alive. He laid down his life for me for 30 years, and I did what I did to everyone who loved me. I took advantage of him. I used him, stole from him, lied to him, ran his reputation down. You know what he did? Come on, I'll help you out. He bonded. The members of Alcoholics Anonymous got together. 5 of them came over and said, "Leave him in jail. I hope he dies under. I hope they bury him underneath the jail." He went and got a $27,900 certified check and bonded me out. He said, Bill Swan's my friend, and I love him. I asked David after years of doing this and him helping me when I almost was just sick of self, ashamed of myself. I said, David, why do you keep helping me? And he told me something that after the treacherous experience of coming in and out for 40 years, I forget it sometimes. He said, because when I look at you, I see me. Having had a spiritual awakening young as a result of these steps, if I trust his process, if I continue through prayer, meditation, and self-examination, when you come up, I won't see your flaws. When you come up, I'll see the Christ in you. I'll see the God in you. I'll see the God consciousness in you, because that's what I'm looking with. When you guys start to look ugly or sick to me, I know all I have to do is what my sponsor told me. If you're looking for fault, Bill Swan, put down the binoculars and pick up a mirror. It's not them, it's always you. Like I said, I forgot that this week. I was so steeped in self. And here's the deal. The gift was the guy calling me, asking me for help. That's freedom from bondage. God was giving me an invitation, and I was trying to throw it away so I could get back here and talk to all my fans on Zoom. Give me a break. This is an artificial meeting. Nothing happens till I leave the house. I got to be rubbing shoulders and interaction. That's how I've been exposed to. It's phenomenal if you got clean on Zoom. God love you. That's your entrance. That's the message God gave you. I'm in the heartland of recovery in Cleveland, Ohio. My sponsor, Paul, came with the page, and a bunch of them came. Wish you had about Kirsty. I probably asked her to marry. You can erase that from the tape if you want to, Kirsty. You know I'm kidding. But they came from the UK and Canada and Illinois, and Donnie came from Pennsylvania. He got in his car on a suggestion. So they have nowhere to stay. I said, God will provide. He came there and Paul put them over the Taj Mahal. And they visited Founders Day. They were so excited because the birthplace of all this began 89 years plus ago in my backyard. And I treat it like everything else has been given to me. Take it for granted. Of course I do. One day, you know what? I had an intuitive thought I was going to visit my mom. She's in assisted living right now. She's not going to get out, at least not get out and be able to live on her own. She's confined to a bed and to a chair. Me and my sister go see her a lot. And one day I was visiting from Chicago, and I wasn't so consumed with myself. They had asked me to speak at a meeting in the UK, and I said, oh my God, I'm 20 minutes from Dr. Bob's house. Some of these people may never be able to see it. Let me take them and show it to them. And I went down there and excited them so much. They got a hold of Dr. Bob's Foundation. And Gail has come and done presentations to the UK many times in Dr. Bob's house. Of course, I wanted some recognition one day and they didn't give it to me. And I almost got mad about it, but I went anyhow. But I wanted to make sure there weren't as many people on the meeting as when I did it over for Birmingham, and there weren't. But afterwards, I thought, why can't you be happy? Just because you weren't involved, why can't you be happy? And then that voice, this God consciousness said, did you do it for recognition or did you do it so they can have an experience? And I said, I did it for them. He said, then how could you get twisted? And wouldn't you know, the next time they did it on recording, Gail mentioned my name and said, if it wasn't for Bill Swan. See, there's a line in another book I read that says this, humble yourself before God and he will exalt you. Quit running up to the front of the house to be known. All my life has been drawing attention to myself. So I spoke at a meeting once. I spoke at a meeting a lot of times. You know, that was a lie. I didn't mean it to be a lie. I was speaking at a meeting and a lady jumped up, the first one to comment. She said, your mother's a saint. I kind of went back in my mind. I said, the only thing I said about my mother is I'm finally official member of AA. I moved in with my mom at 50 some years old. She wasn't talking about what I said about my mom. She was talking about my mom. When she got sober, that she worked with the same office my mother did. My mother helped her out. She's a very charitable Christian lady. She paid for this gal's continuing education in the room to complete it and guide her. And she said, for the last 13 years, I've been telling your mother about my success and progress in Alcoholics Anonymous. And for the last X amount of years, your mother had been telling me about her son who was drinking and smoking himself to death in Florida and had such a hard time with this recovery process. She said, and your mother told me that she dedicated her life to praying for that son. And she said, tonight, I get to see the manifestation of God's answered prayers. Wow. The people we affect. A guy just didn't want to drink one day and was in Akron, Ohio, and this all started. An addict just didn't want to smoke one day in California, and this all started. God gave us a gift. You know, I went to church the other day, which should have been the first indication that I was full of self, because now I'm looking for God in a building, because the windows are nice, stained glass windows. And any time that I feel that I have to go to church to connect with God, it's letting me know that I'm so blocked from him, because he's not out there unless I bring him. He's not at church unless we bring him, but we bring him collectively. And do you want to know something? I'm so glad I went, because guess what the message was that day? Oh, yeah, we know Jesus loves you. You don't have to go far to hear that. Here's what the lady said. You got to take inventory. I said, I've let up on my program of action. I got so infatuated with my big book performance that I didn't need to do a review that day. And when I don't do a review in step 11, what happens is when I get up in the morning, I really don't need to ask God to direct my thinking, because I kind of start to fall asleep. And then I don't watch for the things throughout the day that block me from God. And then by the end of the day, I don't need to take a review. And on the third or fourth day, like I said, I'm finding fault with the people that saved my life, because they begin to look ugly to me because my inside's gotten tarnished. I made a decision in step 3, and here's what happened. I got to the point where I looked at my life at 9 months clean. 9 months and 3 days. I know the date, not because I was keeping track, just a specific date. I looked at my life at 62 and I had no buffer. I knew I couldn't put no more anesthetic in me. This lawsuit was going on. I knew where my teeth were, but I didn't have money to glue them in. I got them in today. I don't know about you guys, but I feel good and I look good. I got a tie on here for the Unshakable Foundation. That's for the people on the tape recording. You'll never see this again. But I remember thinking, at 62 years old, I got no job, no retirement, no car, no license. They yanked my mortgage license. I had 2 new felonies. I didn't have a girlfriend, which seemed real important at the time. And I would never be able to get one based on my net worth. My sponsor says it's not your lack of money that keeps girls away from you. We got to work on that 6 and 7. But nonetheless, I looked at my life and I wanted to end it. We were on a meeting today and a guy got clean at 51 years old. This is 62. I'm in the final days of my life. There's more life behind me than in front of me. And there's a line in the doctor's opinion that says there are those that make the supreme sacrifice, and I want it out of my life sober. And I tell you, something happened. It was like a collage, a kaleidoscope of all the miracles that I had seen in recovery went through my head. I thought God was punishing me, letting me know, look what you missed. But I realized what I had seen. And I remember at the time I was telling you guys, I started listening to those speakers that Bob Darrell on one of his talks, and it really touched my spirit. He described a sculpture by the Donatello. It was in a museum, and it was a sculpture of Mary Magdalene. And he said it wasn't like Mary that you see in the church. He said it looked like she had lived the life that she lived. He said her teeth were chipped. You can see it if you look at it online, the Donatello. He said her teeth are chipped and her skin's worn out. Looks like she'd been out there turning $5 tricks, he said, in the back alley of Jerusalem. And you can just see that life has beat her up. But directly positioned across from her is the glorious Christ. And he's glowing and he's shining, and you can see a glimmer in her eye, and it almost looks as if she's saying, could this be for me? Could this be for me? And what happened is I said, God, I don't even know if you're real. If you're not, I suppose I'm doomed. But if you are, if this could be for me, I'll do anything. The surrender was complete, Young. He gave me a vision of what life was with him. And I wanted to be a life with him more than I wanted to be a life without, because it was lonely and empty. In and out of, the stuff we do. I don't care if I can get one more hit, I'm still smoking. I had destroyed my life, my limbs, my freedom, my marriage, my sanity, my job. I almost lost limbs because it's so infected from shooting stuff with toxicity. And all I wanted was one more. And today I just want one more of this. Just give me more. So I texted my friend today and I said, I'm sorry that I was short with you. He was the gift, and I almost threw it away, Young, because selfishness and self-centeredness, that's at the root. And what I do is it takes a bite, and I get an appetite for it, and it starts to feed off of me till it ultimately devours me. Thank God, in that third step decision, I made a covenant, a commitment. I said, God, will you have me? And he says, yes. When my sponsor talked about the 7th step, he said in that, the verbiage says, my creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. He said, that sounds like a wedding vow. I said, Ralph, that's exactly, I got so excited. I've never heard that before that I started to meditate on that. And I called him back 2 days later. I said, Ralph, that's the wedding vow. Guess when the engagement takes place? Step 3, God, I offer myself, will you be mine? And the answer is always yes. But we got to make some changes, because every other relationship you've gotten into, Bill Swan, has ended in a restraining order, and we want this one to last. So he cleans me up in 4 through 7. I look at myself and see what my life looks like without God. And in 7, I asked him to remove the things that separate me or make me feel separated from him. And in 8 and 9, and I'm not done with my 9-step amends, I caused a lot of damage in Florida. I haven't been back there yet. I will go back there yet. I'm willing to do anything because here's what I discovered. If there's someone I'm not willing to face, something I'm not willing to pay, or something I'm not willing to do, what I'm saying is I'm willing to let that person in my pride stand in the way of the light that's been drawing me. See, my disease has driven me. God is drawing me. I want to be more and more like God each and every day. So what I had to do was a little inventory, a little gratitude to God, and then come on here and tell you the story that I was rehearsing all week is not the one you got today, but you got Bill Swan. This is all I am. I've seen so many miracles in Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous. I understand now when they said if all the books were written about the miracles that he did, it couldn't contain them all, because we're the miracles and they just keep going on. We tell our stories, we share in a general way what we used to be like. What happened? He surrendered me. I accepted the invitation, and I thought I was the one making it. I asked him to take his rightful place in my life, and he does what's necessary to remind me, because he puts enough people in my life that when I see in them this self-centeredness that I can't stand, it's not their self-centeredness. You had a guy finally getting a place to stay and needed a ride, and I wanted to say no. Thank God I said yes and didn't tell him how I really feel. He's on here today and he knows who I'm talking about. But that's enough said about that. I ask God to direct my thinking most of the time. I didn't most of last week, but I'm not going to make that mistake today. I continue to watch for the things that block me from the power. And I try and help other people and I try and say yes. And so I was close with this thought. I don't know how much. Oh, perfect. I called my sponsor a couple of months ago. I said, Ralph, I'm going to start saying no to all these requests. These people are making me crazy. He said, what's the problem? I said, I'm tired of hearing myself talk. He said, quit listening. He said, you have a message and you need to carry it. And he said, besides, you ain't got nothing else going on in your life. You keep saying yes. And here's the message. If you are a person that claims to be a chronic relapser, which is a misnomer, what it really means is someone who got high again because they couldn't not get high again, because relapse means to return to a former state. Resume means to continue with an interruption. Every time I got unwarranted money, I'd run to the dope house. I never said I'm ready to relapse. I said I was resuming. If I got high today, it would be a relapse because I'd have to give away everything that you guys have birthed and breathed into me for the last 28 months. And I'm not willing to do that. So here's the message. If you're getting high after you come to your first meeting and you identify with this thing called addiction, that means when you want to, you can't stay stopped forever. And if while using, you have little control over the amount, you might be suffering from an illness we have a solution to. The solution is invite God to take his rightful place in your life and get out of the way. The problem was never step one. I always knew I was an addict. The problem was I couldn't release the unmanageability of my life to the power. Young, Isaac, the crew, thank you so much for having me at the Unshakable Foundation. I love you all. Thanks for letting me share.
Hi, Becca, alcoholic addict of all sorts. Bill, nice to hear you again. Um, so I'm listening and I'm wondering, you said you're 61, 62, 6, whatever, however old you are, and you have 28
64.
months, 60, well, you look great. Uh,
You
and
sitting on me. I love it. I knew there was a reason I'm here today, Christy.
and you're 28 months clean, and your sponsor's telling you you have a message, and I'm just wondering, how did you keep going for all? Because I've had this thought recently, like maybe not all of us are supposed to shine at 25 years old. Maybe some of us shine at 65 or 80. But that's a long time to be waiting. It's discouraging. how do I keep going forward? And in that I'm expecting, I don't even know what I'm asking. I don't know.
If it wasn't for the fellowship, I wouldn't be alive today. I would come into the meeting one time. I got my head kicked in so bad I fell into a meeting. Marty Scott picked me up and took me to the hospital. They would nurse me back to health. I wouldn't treat my addiction. If you want to know how to shine, take the steps. There's a difference between being in attendance, being in recovery, and having the program in you. When the program gets in you, you can't stop but to shine. You just keep coming. Take the steps the way they're laid out in the book, because it says to show other addicts precisely how the ones who wrote the book recovered is the purpose of the book. Have someone take you through the book. I promise you, you will shine. You keep coming with us here. You stay with us.
Thank you so much for your question, Becca. Before I move on to the next hand, we just got a question in the chat from Hannah. And the question is, I believe that God gives us little hugs throughout the day. How does God give you hugs?
I just told you, but usually I pass them off as irritant. Sometimes I just get something. I went to church the other day, and they didn't say this, but I recalled something from 20 years ago that meant so much to me. And it was one of them scriptures where God was talking to, he said, call on me and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things. I thought, holy moly, could you imagine if God really wanted to hear from us? And Cameron was speaking one night and he said, duh, do you think God made 8 billion of us so that he could sit and talk to himself? Wow, why don't I talk to my creator, the most important relationship? He hugs me, he carries me throughout the day. Here's how I know when he's doing it. Trying to get out of myself and I open my eyes. He's always doing it. Always. It's perpetual, God. Without him, I couldn't breathe.
Thank you for your question, Hannah. Next, we have Oliver. Oliver, would you like to come in, please?
Oliver, Grateful Addict. Thank you everyone for being here. And can you hear me, by the way? Because the other day no one could hear me. They didn't tell me till after. I just wanted to firstly thank you. You touched my heart with that share. And do you know what came into my head was I felt like I was bearing witness. That just came in my head. I got it. I got it in a real beautiful way. What I wanted to ask is, what advice do you have to someone who wants to grow their group? It's an in-person home group, and it's just something that we just struggle with sometimes. We just want to see it grow and thrive. Really, what advice do you have?
Sorry, one more time. You want to see it grow and thrive?
Our home group, yeah.
And you're trying to attract more people or keep the ones you have, or
I think keep them mainly. Yeah, I think that's more what it is. To be honest, is just keeping people.
there's people out there somewhere in the world. They will get together and they will do a group, take them through the traditions and take them through a group inventory. Because if you're getting people and then they're not coming, sometimes groups get sick and we can't see it. Thank God that lady called me the other for my home group because she was a friend. And that's why I didn't shun her. And I listened to what she said and I finally heard it. She was telling me that because she loved me, not because she wanted to hurt me or control me. And thank God I was able to listen. I don't know how you get them bigger. I mean, you got to hope that go meet them at the jail when they get out. Go into detoxes and treatment centers, carry the message and tell them where your home group is when they get out and they'll meet you there. Traction rather than promotion, right?
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Oliver. Next up, we have Josh. Josh, would you like to come in, please?
Would love to. How's it going, folks? My name's Josh B. I'm a grateful, recovered, sober alcoholic and addict. Bill, fantastic, man. Just fantastic, dude. When you talk, it is truly touching. And the thing that's crazy about this that a lot of people don't know, we didn't used to like each other, probably because we're so alike. Early on, it was this rub. And then Bill showed up once. I was doing this talk and he showed up right after. And I thought I'd knocked it out of the park and bloated head, bloated ego. And he calls me and he goes, when are you going to tell your real story? I was like, what? Dude, I got up at 3:15 to knock it. What do you mean? You know? And he was right. He was right. I was regurgitating bullet points of what it was that I thought, why I thought I went back out into the wilderness after 10 and a half years. This isn't Josh's share time. This is a question for Bill. I love you, man. And you know I do. You and I have talked at length about the spiritual awakening, and you talked today about relapsing and resumption. You know, it says, if he were sought, and it also says, may you find him now. Are we seeking? Are we finding? Or is it both? In your view?
Okay. Now you want me to put on my prophet hat, huh? I think Dolly shared this morning on a meeting, and she said, when I found the newcomer, I found God. So maybe finding and seeking are the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I sought myself, I could not see. I sought my God, he eluded me. I sought the newcomer and found all three. Don't try to trick me with those questions, Josh. We're even now.
Thank you so much for your question, Josh. Next up, we have Michael. Michael, would you like to come in with your question, please?
I would love to. It's not really a question. I'm stalking Bill lately, and I just wanted to thank him for sharing. I've never heard him do like the whole thing, and this I can't exactly explain it. I feel this connection between us. There's a lot about us that's really similar. And I just wanted to say that you blew me away, dude. I mean, you just blew me away. Your connection to your higher power. I had a long road to that. I rejected it at first. You know, I wasn't here. The second they said God, I was ready to leave. And thank God I had a sponsor who skillfully helped me make the connection to a power greater than myself, of my understanding. And you know, I don't want it. You know, you don't want it. You got a new car. How are you going to put this shit in the back of your car? And that thinking comes after me all the time. But I usually stop and pause. That pause they talk about, so that I can realign my thinking, get out of the center. It's not about me. It's not about my car. If somebody has asked me for help, it's my responsibility, if I can help, to do that. But that doesn't come easily. You know, I lived in the center of the universe for 40 years. Getting out is rough. And I find myself gravitating back. And that's what I love about you. You're able to describe the fact that you're still a sick bastard. And every day you've got to deal with that. You know, I know what I need to do. My sponsors tell me, you don't know anything. Shut up. And I was so offended. And today, when I hear that, Mike, I know what I need to do. I'm not quite as graphic as my sponsor. I say, no, you really don't. You know, you need to listen. You need to follow the direct. Someone who's on this road needs to show you where the turns and the holes are. Otherwise, you will fall in. I love you, man. And I am so glad that you're here. And I'm so glad I was here today. You know, you invited me, and I'm a little tired, but here I am. And I'm so glad that I came. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, brother. And now let me answer the question you meant to ask. It's just one thing. Isn't it interesting that the disease does not come from this power? And the biggest thing that we're in opposition to when we get here is God, and it's what we need the most. It's almost like this disease has its own life. And if it can keep us away from the power, it can get us alone and kill us. God's bigger than all that.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Bill. We've got 2 hands up left and not a load of time. So if we could keep it to questions and keep them fairly quick as well, that would be great. And next up, we've got Young. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Isaac. Hi, everyone. My name's Young, recovered addict. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for being a demonstration, a very powerful demonstration. 40 years in and out, and what a powerful message you have. So really quickly, I know we've got a treatment centre on here, Bill, and I know we've got some newcomers, people struggling. Have you got a few words for them, please, brother? Thank you.
Yeah. So I thought about this. This is the third hardest thing I ever did was ask for help. Second hardest thing I did was let someone help me. The hardest thing I ever did was let them help me without telling them how the help should go. The thing that stands in the way of this is ourself. I promise you, as soon as I came to those, I want to tell you that I said it in my talk. As soon as I made amends for my behavior, the spirit came back on. It was that simple. Don't worry about the girl across the room. She'll be there when, we come into a treatment center. Every girl I ever got with was either in a psych ward or a treatment center. I was ready to get married till we get out together on the same day and her husband picks her up. Quit relying on your thinking. The guy told me today, his sponsor told him his thinking is for entertainment purposes only. His brain is broken. We think that our thinking's pure. When we get there, what we don't realize is that the drugs aren't the problem. Selfishness, self-centeredness, and the way I think so flawed is the problem. Surrender. Ask God to help you surrender. Invite God into your life, whether you believe in him or not, and watch what happens. That's all I can say. And I'll be over at the Ark. I spoke there twice already. I love that place. You guys, miracles happen there. The grace of God's there by people who get paid not as much money as you guys would make when you're working, because I used to judge them too and think, how can these $10 an hour techs tell me anything? Then I realized one day they weren't doing it for money. They were doing it so maybe in a year from now I'd come back and carry a message of hope. Everything that you think's backwards. My sponsor said, and when it says we stood at the turning point, guys, you know what you do at the turning point? You turn. Go in the wrong direction. Turn around. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rebecca. My bad.
Thanks, Bill, and thank you, Young, for your question. Last but definitely not least, we got Rebecca. Would you like to come in, please?
Hi, my name is Rebecca. Can you hear me? And I am a newcomer, just past 4 months sober in AA. And I have a sponsor working the steps. And I just want to say a few things, Bill. When you popped on the screen today, I had this overwhelming feeling that I knew you from somewhere, which is not possible because this is one of my very first CA meetings. And I felt like that was God coming in. And also you said something that came out of the words of my sponsor on the phone this morning. And that was when you said, when you see a newcomer come in and they remind you of yourself. She prompted me to like hold that as like a future, something that would happen in the future. But I just finished my third step with my sponsor. And when I did, I didn't feel that surrender. But then some events happened throughout the week. And I mean, yesterday was just one thing after another. Like my mom has COVID, she's in the hospital, moving to like all kinds of stuff was happening, running at me. And finally, I just held up my hands and I was like, I give up. I surrender. And I felt it in my body, that feeling of surrender. And, my question for you is like, how do you find God? How do you gain that connection with your God? Like,
You muted yourself. Heard you ask the question, how do you gain your connection? And then.
Yeah, like through prayer, meditation, or it just comes to you, or, or like, how do you seek that connection? I guess is my question.
First of all, let me tell you this real quick. Not that I'm an authority, but here's what the book says. You can do that third step. That official, the wording was, of course, quite optional. It says sometimes an effect was felt at once, sometimes a great effect. But even if it wasn't, if you follow the instructions, the cake's going to turn out the way it is. I had to clean my insides had to be cleaned out. When I invited God in, I didn't get to the whole detail of the steps because I guess it wasn't meant to be today, but I'll say it now. When I sat down 4 days later, it looked like I had vomited everything that I held inside of me out onto paper, and I shared it with someone. It was what was inside me that I was keeping to myself that was blocking me from the experience. That's why it says next. That means right now. We launched out on a course of action. The first step is the house cleaning because we're making room for the invitation. We've invited God in. We rolled out the red carpet, but he's got to have a place to sit down. Follow the instructions for step 4, and guess what? You will be contacted. Where are you from, real quick? Florida?
Friday Harbor, Washington.
Washington. Okay, I've never offended anyone there yet, but I've got time. I've been to a lot of states. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you, Bill, for answering the questions. This now brings us to the end of question time, but not quite the end of the meeting.